if we want to break that down, looking at a couple sectors, with tar sands, one of the dirtiest fossil fuels out there, Chase has quadrupled their financing of tar sands just in the last year alone. They've lent over $243 million to Trans Mountain when Kinder Morgan owned that pipeline, and continue to be a leading banker of TransCanada and Enbridge, the companies behind the Keystone XL pipeline and Line 3. And the bottom line is that Chase is financing the destruction of our shared climate. And if we're to have any chance of halting catastrophic climate change, we need to end expansion and a complete phase out of these dangerous energy sources. And by far, Chase is the worst of the worst, just looking at the data.
I think so. So it's one thing to see. It's one thing to see the data and the numbers, but I'd love to hear from you, Cedar and Joy. Can someone give Joy water? How does that translate in your community? So how do Chase's investments in pipelines like Trans Mountain influence and have an impact on your community?
There's a lot of impacts. Wow. Well, first off, us as Leotown Nation, our people went from 13, we came down to 13 people, and now we have just about 300 people. And well, we came up with our own assessment, our own 1,200-page assessment document of the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline. So there's so many effects, and the effects are vast. You know, and from that, we also have different reports, health reports, air regulation reports that are coming out, and we're doing this with leading scientists and world-renowned scientists around the world, based off of our spiritual law and the connection that we have to the law, which is our stories and which is our spiritual reciprocal connection to the land. And the thing is that we just bring in these scientists, and we found out that, well, first off, we're winning, right? We sent Kinder Morgan back. So no one wants to buy this pipeline because we caused so much risk and uncertainty that no one wanted to buy it. So then the federal government buy it, and we just won against them in the NEB system in court. So it was really a David versus Goliath fight, 300 of us versus one of the most powerful countries when it comes to money in the world. So there's a lot of these effects, and because of that, we decided to fight. We'll stand up to that. And right now we're winning, and I'm really happy to say that, you know, it's a beautiful win. It's a beautiful thing. And so from that, well, there's a lot of effects. First off, we found out 1 million people will get sick within 24 hours of a spill. That's almost half the people on the Lower Mainland in the greater Vancouver area, and that's half of the population. I also wrote up an extensive orca report on the hazards on the orcas. Even without a spill, even with no spill, it'll help endanger. I mean, it'll help make there no more orcas in the Salem Sea, and which we haven't been having any healthy orcas in the last little while. And so we came out with those reports working with our allies, and you know, orca whales are already dying. You know, they're already dying right now. When we should have been doing something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we have to do it right now when our relatives on the Alberta tar sands are dying and our relatives in the water, the orca whales, are dying. Now's the time to do something. Now's the time that we have to stand up. So these effects from the money is very, very vast when it comes to, safety and hazard.
My name is Eagle Feather Woman. My American or colonized name is Joy Braun. So the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe is just below Standing Rock. We share a border with Standing Rock. And we've been fighting Keystone XL pipeline and TransCanada before that with Keystone 1. So I've been fighting TransCanada for over 10 years. Keystone XL pipeline has given notice to the tribes and to Montana and to South Dakota and to Nebraska that they are going to start pre-construction this fall. Now, when I first put out the notice when I was at Standing Rock about pre-construction, construction came very shortly after that, and you guys saw what happened. I have seen the list of the ammunition that they are preparing to use against us. seen the look of hatred in the highway patrol as I travel Montana and South Dakota and Nebraska along the Keystone XL pipeline. They plan to put man camps. Do you guys know what a man camp is? A man camp is this temporary city filled with pipeline workers who have cash to burn. And these pipeline workers are notorious for using heroin and methamphetamine and bringing alcohol and drugs into our communities. And they deliberately put these man camps and these infrastructures right next to indigenous communities. So Keystone XL Pipeline currently is starting to man a man camp outside of Fort Peck Reservation. They're putting 600 people in there right now. It plans to be over 1,000 people. Right next to my reservation, they plan to put a 1,400-person man camp. Now let me give you an example. It takes 2 hours. 2 hours for an ambulance to get out to house a Bridger. 2 hours. And then, if you're lucky, you might be able to get a helicopter out. How many of you have heard of missing and murdered indigenous women? That is one of our biggest fears. Because these men can drive along in their great big pickups, flashing money and booze and drugs to our children, to our youth, 12, 13 years old, and we'll never see them again. So that's one of the things that we're afraid of. JP Morgan Chase funds sex trafficking as far as I'm concerned, and murder. Dakota Access crossed one time on the Missouri River. Keystone XL plans to cross 3 times on the Missouri River. Now they've given notice to the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, my tribe, that they plan to cross these in January. And they also plan to cross the Cheyenne River, which is the border of my reservation, in January. How many of you guys remember seeing those pictures of us with minus 60 degrees and the wind blowing and us standing outside going up against the militarized police? Well, we're getting ready to do that again. JP Morgan Chase. You know what? When we went to their shareholders meeting, they really didn't want to let us in. I snuck in ahead of the rest of the delegation, and I dressed up all kind of nice and everything, and then I snuck in. But that was the only way that I could get in. And to pretend that I wasn't with our delegation, it was the only way that I could get up there and tell JP Diamond that he was an asshole.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. So speaking of taking action, I really want to acknowledge Alec, who has been an organizer in Seattle, putting together actions that are just incredible, bringing hundreds of people together, thousands of people together, shutting down bank branches, and even shutting down major streets. Could you share a little bit about why or how it is in Seattle that you organize and get that level of a turnout, and really hold JP Morgan Chase accountable?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks to Joy. It was really amazing to sit up here with you. It's such an honour to be here on the panel with Joy and Cedar and others here. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that I certainly didn't do any of that alone in Seattle, and I was only one tiny small part of it, and we're really lucky in Seattle to have a wonderful collection of experienced activists and organisers. But I think there's also a deep understanding of the role of the banks in the climate crisis. I think we all understand that the fossil fuel industry is the villain. The fossil fuel industry is the evil enemy, the illegitimate, immoral actor in society that is deliberately pushing us towards climate catastrophe and is deliberately, systemically violating Indigenous people's right to free, prior, informed consent on their land, water, and air. But we've got to understand that the banks play such a pivotal role in the climate crisis that they're not just profiting from the climate crisis, but they're actively enabling it. That without major funding from the banks, the fossil fuel companies couldn't afford to build these new pipelines. Dakota Access Pipeline was a $3.8 billion pipeline, $2.5 billion of that came from major bank loans. The banks just simply don't have enough liquid capital lying around to build these projects without the support. Fossil fuel companies don't have enough money lying around to build these projects without the support of the banks. And that means the banks aren't just complicit, but they're morally culpable, and they deserve blame and vitriol and righteous anger every single bit as much as the fossil fuel industry does. And I think we've been able to tell that story in Seattle, and when you tell people the story of the fact that the banks are actively enabling the growth of the fossil fuel industry and underwriting climate disaster, and there's a certain kind of desire for justice, a desire to hold the banks accountable that we can harness. And you know, we're living in a moment where we're running out of time to do anything about catastrophic climate change. And we cannot just allow major institutions that are on every high street to carry on with business as usual as they're actively destroying our climate and poisoning our waters and violating Indigenous people's rights to their sovereign rights on their own lands. Yeah, I think we've been really lucky in Seattle to also have people who are willing to step up and realise that actually participating in an action in which you might be arrested, participating in an action where you might be blocking a street or shutting down a bank for a day is pretty small fry compared to the scale of the crisis that we're facing, and we've had a lot of people who are willing to step up and step outside their comfort zones, which has been really fortunate.
Thanks. So I want to acknowledge that the divestment movement really truly took legs following the Indigenous-led movement in opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline. I'm wondering, how can allies, how can NGOs, environmental groups really better support Indigenous-led fossil fuel resistance work? What has worked, what doesn't work?
This is actually one of the key components that you as allies can do. In fact, it's something that we need you to be more active involved in. Because it isn't just us standing out there in the cold or the heat or the swamps like Sharif Voigtland down in Bayou Ridge. It isn't just that. We need you here in San Francisco. We need you in LA. We need you in Chicago. We need you in Seattle to be going up against these banks. Now, these banks got great, big, huge PR firms. And if you look at their stuff, because I've been to all these shareholder meetings, and every single one of them got this point in there saying, oh, we're doing all this environmental, blah, 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 and it's a whole bunch of hypocrisy, and it's a whole bunch of bullshit. Because I'll give you an example. Wells Fargo is offering $10 million in grants to indigenous communities over a 5-year period. But at the same time, they are offering 5 to 6 times that amount in fossil fuel infrastructure. Way much more. So what they try to do, just like they try to do in the Amazon, or what they try to do to us up here, or what they try to do up in Alberta, is they try to get 1 or 2 indigenous communities or organizations to sign off. But the vast majority of us, 90% of us, say, no, we don't want this bullshit. But what we need is we need you guys. This is something you can do. action. You don't have to be arrested. Not everybody is going to be arrestable. We need people to bring water. We need food. We need childcare. There's all kinds of things you guys can do. And it's when you guys put pressure out here that we actually get noticed on the front lines. Because without you, nobody cares what happens to Sharif Floydland or to me. I need you. And I'm not just saying that. I need every single one of you. Because it doesn't matter your ability. I came in that wheelchair because I can't walk too good anymore. Energy Transfer Partners did a number on me. But I'm still willing to stand up against TransCanada and against the uranium and the gold mining. And you guys heard me coughing. That's from the dapple cough. You guys heard of the dapple cough? They found humus in my mucus. They found things in there that the doctors didn't even know what they were. But I'm still willing to stand. It doesn't matter. I've always said that people came up in wheelchairs and walkers and canes and whatever, and we found things that they can do. You can do this.
So something you had mentioned too, from the Amazon and for the JP Morgan Chase shareholder meeting, Joy joined us, Cedar joined us, Tess joined us as well as Manari Oshigwa from the Sabara Nation, who is not here today. But I'm curious to hear from you. It seems like there is a emerging solidarity between North American, the global North and the global South with indigenous leadership. Could you share on where you see that moving?
So there's this prophecy. And I first heard this prophecy when I was about 15 years old. We had some people from Ecuador that came up to Eagleville, South Dakota, which is where I live. Now I'm going to be 50 years old, so this was a while ago. And they were telling me about this prophecy called the eagle and the condor. And when they said that the eagle and the condor were going to unite, then there was going to be great change upon the land that we walk upon. And when the eagle and the condor united, that the indigenous people would become so enlightened that we would enlighten the world. Guess what? You're seeing it happen now. This is indigenous rising. This is not a movement led by the Washichu or Fatpig or the corporate. This is a movement led by us, the indigenous people.
You know, it's good that this is happening. You know, just like me being 21, I'm the first generation who can't eat off the land. I'm the first generation that can't go out into the sea, eat our salmon, eat our oysters, or eat our seafood. You know, I'm the first generation, and we always heard from my grandmother and from my father. They said when the tide went out, the table was served. I'm also the first generation to see our seas get toxic. You know, 10 years ago, we used to go into the stream and we used to play, we used to cool down our babies, we used to go there and do our ceremonies where we go into the water. That was one of our places where we came to together, and now it's toxic. You know, now it's toxic. And so, we have to do this now. Because how would you feel being 21 years old going through this? How would you feel being 21 years old to some of the older people? How would you feel being 21 years old right now and knowing these things? You know, the highest concentrations of cancer in the world, you know, some of the cities that are brought up are Fort McMurray and Houston, Texas, and those are the epicenters of oil. You know, how would you feel growing up and seeing this? And 1 million people will get sick within 24 hours of what we did our assessment. The hospitals cannot even carry that many people in the Vancouver area, British Columbia. And it will affect all of Seattle too, you know, all of the Puget Sound. The hospitals cannot carry that capacity. So really what makes me feel like, what happens when I bring my little brother, he gets sick, and have to bring him to the hospital and there's a lineup and it said, sorry, we cannot help heal your little brother. I can't help heal your niece or nephew. That's the reality right now. And there's refineries right in here too. I wonder if there's a study out there, you know, what are those studies saying? And so that's why we're coming together. You know, we were down working in Peru too with some people. Even all across the world, New Zealand, indigenous people are rising. We're coming out of a 500-year Sundance, or a 500-year suffering, and our people are growing stronger. Our grandfather said, we will rise from the water like the thunderbird of old and be at the greatest that this society has ever seen. Our people will be integrated into the greatest aspect that this world has ever seen. Our people will be in the House of Commons. Our people will be in the Capitol. Our people will bring that love and will bring that reciprocal relationship into the government, and we'll be the proudest segment this society has ever seen. Because this country was taken from one people and made on the backs of another people. That's taken from the Native Americans and made slaves of the Africans. It was taken and made up from the other one, from other peoples. That's where we're coming from. But now it's changing. You see not only us in the global south coming together, but our relatives from the four corners of the world, our relatives from the north, south, east, west, black, yellow, red, white, all of us are coming together. Those are the prophecies that the young people will come together and make this world different. Because if we don't, what does it mean when I'm my grandmother's age, when she's 65? We're already in 10 years, our ceremony places are toxic. I'm the first generation that can't eat out of my inlet, that can't eat out of my food. I have to go far. I miss doing our ceremonies right there. I don't want my little brother to get sick. I don't want that to happen to anybody else's land. You have to be multi-dimensional in this fight. At our camp, we have the support, and she was asking about the support of other people. I can get on that. We had all of our warriors there at our camp. Over 200 people got arrested, not even in the first month. We had our politicians come in. We had our lawyers get arrested. The governor, the leaders of the state, leaders of British Columbia, leaders from San Francisco, our relatives from around the world came up there to get arrested. We caused so much uncertainty and risk from all of us together, not just indigenous, but all four directions, all of the people. We came together and we didn't look at the color of the skin. We didn't care about how old you were or what you look like or where you came from, as long as you came here with Natsima. As long as you came here with Natsima, one heart, one mind. As long as you came with that love in your heart, we'll work with you. By no means our elders said are we leaders. We're just people dedicating our lives to working with other people for a future where we can live harmonious with other peoples around the world. And that's our dream. That's the dream of our ancestors. That's the dream of our elders. And that's the dream of our young ones. Our young people led that camp from the four directions: black, yellow, white, red. It was our young people who brought in those politicians. It was those young people who brought in our elders to come in. It was the young people who got the Grand Chief of British Columbia to come in and help us. We came to the legislative building and we write up those documents. It's all of us. Because if we don't, what is it going to look like when I'm the age of some of the grandparents in here? I don't want the young people in here, if you have grandchildren, to go home and say, I can't eat off the land. I can't go swimming because it's toxic. There's a toxic sign where our ceremonies were. I don't want that to happen to nobody. Because when you go in the water, our young ones, we have to bathe them quick, otherwise we have to bring them to the hospital. You say you can't go into the inlet, you can't go into the water, it's sick, it's toxic. That's why we're fighting. We're still here. We're still fighting. We're not going anywhere, and now we're winning. And we're not winning by ourselves. So it's important to have all of our warriors on this multi-dimensional ASEAN.
So as Joy had mentioned and Cedar had mentioned, it's going to be a matter of bringing all of us together, everybody taking action, and one of the most concrete and targeted ways to do that is targeting banks like JP Morgan Chase. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Tess, and Alec about upcoming work targeting institutions like JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and US Bank.
On October 16th, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo will have a decision to make on whether or not to give Enbridge Energy a further $1.48 billion. Enbridge need that money to build the Line 3 pipeline that water protectors are fighting and resisting so bravely in Minnesota. So one thing you can do, particularly if you happen to be a Chase or Wells Fargo customer, whether you have a mortgage or a credit card or a checking account with either of those banks, call them and call their customer service and ask to speak to a supervisor and say, I'm calling to lodge a formal complaint about Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold is JP Morgan Chase's global head of sustainability. We, 350 Seattle, recently encouraged all of our members to call JP Morgan Chase's customer service line and say, I'm calling to lodge a formal complaint about a member of staff. You then get escalated to a supervisor, and then you lodge a formal complaint against Matthew Arnold for a gross negligence of duties. And a tiny little story of how just making your voice heard can work. We had somebody who called, not even a Chase customer, and somehow his complaint got escalated to such an extent that the executive director of JP Morgan Chase's executive office called him back and had like a 20-minute conversation. This is the guy who manages Jamie Dimon, the CEO's office. So we just need everyone to make their voices heard and to call Chase, call Wells Fargo, whether or not you're a customer, and say, I'm calling to lodge a formal complaint because you're funding Enbridge Energy, and I'm calling to ask you to not renew the $1.48 billion loan to Enbridge on October 16th. And that would be one small step. And then another would be to begin to align your money with your values and look for a bank that's not profiting off the devastation of our planet, and to let them know why you're removing your money from their bank. A credit union, yeah, credit unions are generally much better.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Alex said. I also think there are tons of organizing opportunities happening in communities all across the country, some related to the upcoming credit renewal on October 16th. There's a petition out right now that is calling on JP Morgan Chase to step away from that credit renewal, and I believe that's on the RAND website. So I would encourage y'all to sign that, share that with your networks, turn up the heat as much as we can, especially around the credit renewals. Yeah.
So when we talked about the investment when it comes to Kinder Morgan, we wanted to make sure that we come at this at different angles and multidimensional. So our elders told us to go at this at a platform of being political, that nothing can stop you when you have these three attributes, that you're going to be strong, and the only person that can stop you is yourself. Now these things that our elders told us, you know, it's more of a new teaching, right? It's something that helped our people, helped us go forward. It's something that helped us make sure that we were to wade in, cause so much risk and uncertainty that no banks wanted to invest into this. And that's go at this at a political, educational, but most of all cultural aspect of this fight. Because sometimes these banks or these people don't understand that there's a spirit in that tree, that there's a spirit right here, the spirit of this room, you know, they don't understand that. And so we went out to Kinder Morgan JGM, and we went there just to tell them the truth based off of a report. Based off of our spiritual law, these reports is what they're from. But sometimes we acknowledge that these banks don't understand that spiritual law, so we do need those numbers, we do need that money talk. We do have to speak that language that they understand, which is to show them reputational risk of their banks. And so that's why we're so successful. And nobody wanted to invest in this pipeline. We beat them. No one wants to, because it's a dead pipeline. We caused so much opposition where 80% of the second biggest city in BC opposed this pipeline, where the mayors, where the city councilmen opposed this pipeline and support our little nation. And when we went to Kinder Morgan's AGM, and 3 months after we spoke at their AGM annual general meeting, their stocks fell by 30%, their dividends cut by 70%. And then so that's just from going there and telling them the truth. So then after that, they pulled out of the pipeline. They pulled out because it was so much risk and uncertainty from opposition, and clearly there's a cultural power that they backed out. Then the federal government bought the pipeline, and they wanted to sell it. And then, so check this out, they wanted to find buyers. So they went around the world to all the banks. And we went to those banks too, even when it came to Europe, or even when it came to Asia, or all over North America. We met with those banks, and guess what? They were trying to find these buyers, but we worked our asses off, and guess who wanted to buy that pipeline? Guess who wanted to buy that pipeline? No one. No one wanted to buy that pipeline. So, this is what happens when you put in that hard work. So, it's because of our elders, and I'm really glad to say that. So we don't have board of directors, we have chief and council, all women, and they make the men they'll make the men do whatever they say. So that's why I'm here. They didn't want to come. No, but that's what happened. No one wanted to buy it. So then.
Can I share just on the question of what people can do and how people can support this? If folks could just take 1 second to pull out their phone. If everyone grabs their phones, I'm going to give you a phone number, and I'd love for everyone to save this phone number in their phones. The phone number, if everyone's ready, is. So firstly, this phone number belongs to Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. His number is 212-270-1111. So that number again, Jamie Dimon's hotline is 212-270-1111. And one thing everyone could do would be to give Jamie Dimon a call and ask him what's up. And ask him to stop financing the desecration of our planet.
So we just have about 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to ask a final question to all our panelists. Where do we need to be in 5 years?
In 5 years, I hope that. Well, one of the things that I've been pushing locally in our so-called United States tribal communities is for divestment from the different tribal governments. Now, my tribal government doesn't bank with Wells Fargo or Chase or any of those. We bank locally. And we do know that it puts a lot of strain on the local banks. But I also know like Matt Remley has been pushing forward community banking, and so I hope to see more community banking options. I know they're pushing forward that in LA. I think here in San Francisco too, and also in Seattle. And so I hope to see more of those community banking options where we, the people, say what we want our money to be invested in with renewables and sustainable options, as well as for partnering with tribal communities. Because I think that if we partner with tribal communities, I think it's a win-win both for urban communities and for the tribal communities. Because then we can not only share resources, but we can share knowledge, I really believe that's one way we can develop communities. So that's what I hope to see.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think I would love to see JP Morgan Chase out of tar sands, at least in the next 5 years. I think there's also really beautiful opportunities to bring in more of the movements out in the world to this fight. JP Morgan Chase also has money and finances immigration detention centers and private prisons, and there's issues with housing and mortgages and all of these ways that JP Morgan Chase destroys communities. And I think there is beautiful opportunity to bring those movements together, to support our indigenous allies, to support frontline and fence-side communities all across the country. So I'd love to see them out of tar sands in a stronger movement with allies touching different areas to get Chase out of all of the nasty stuff that they're involved with.
Where will we be in 5 years? What Joy said about public banks, I really believe that we're not going to really see an end to, we're not going to be able to effectively tackle the climate crisis or the harm that is occurring to communities until we move away from fundamentalist free market capitalist system. And there's no kind of way to strike more to the heart of the free market fundamentalist capitalist system than going for the financial sector. And nothing is more antithetical to fundamentalist free market capitalism than major communities setting up their own banks. So I would love to see San Francisco and Oakland and Seattle and New York all setting up public banks and community banks. And I think that is achievable in the next 5 years. That's one thing I would like to see.
I think where we should be in 5 years is definitely not where we're at right now. But to be honest, I think it's to educate the young people and the youth, I think that is the most important thing, because this is the biggest money transfer in history, what the youth is going to inherit. And that's what gives me hope, is because of the climate changes. I mean, climate justice is somewhat of a trend, and I think they're taking it from natives, but it's good, right? No. But seriously, I think it's to educate the youth right now, educate the young people. We do a lot of lectures and a lot of studying and a lot of classes, seminars at UBC and the local universities. And what's different about Vancouver is that you'll come see. We have a big group of people from the 30s to like 16. And all of them are running it, and we understand that we're going to inherit all this money, the biggest wealth transfer in the history. So if we teach our young people to go forward in a renewable energy future, this next generation has a lot of hope. We have a lot of hope because you come here and see all these young people are out here. So I think the biggest thing where we should be in 5 years is educating the youth, so that when that money transfer happens of the world economy, that our world economy is based off of renewable energy. And I think that's where we need to be. There's I forget how many trillions of dollars there are out there. And also, I can only talk for my land and my people, saving the orca whales. They're dying right now. We're working with Governor Ansley's task force, and if anybody wants that report, I took it from many of our experts. I took it from our 1,200-page assessment document. It's an easy read, and if you guys want to get that report, I'm more than happy and willing to share that with you guys. Just come get my information, and don't be afraid to come talk to me. I can't speak for the other panelists, but actually, come on and talk to us if you really want to, and come get that report. But most of all, I'm just gonna say this. Please, educate our young people. We need to educate them in the schools and the universities. It's the time, it's like Star Wars, New Hope, right? So let's do that. Sorry if I'm slouching this thing right here. So yeah, thanks.